Is it? Oh yes it is! Boys and girls, a McLaren 540C. If you don't know, I used to own one of these cars. A little bit less powerful than its more famous brother, the 570S, but what was more important to me 9 years ago, a little bit more affordable. It was my first real proper modern day supercar. I sort of miss it, but I don't really miss owning it, if you know what I mean, because, let's face it, McLaren do have a reputation for not being the most reliable cars ever, and my 540C did have a few gremlins. Anyway, you find me down at Thorney Motorsport. I'm here to answer a very important question. Is it worth buying a cheap McLaren? I cannot be the only one that's noticed. Here in the UK, you can find on the used market McLarens like the 540C, the 570S, even 650S's sub 100 grand. That feels like a lot of car for the money. But like I was just saying, McLaren's known for not necessarily the best reliability. So whilst it's tempting to think of owning a car like this for the same price as a bloody Audi RS3, it's not tempting if you think it's going to be in the workshop the whole time. So I wanted to come and ask the experts, what are the potential pitfalls to owning a bargain McLaren? Now this is an interesting McLaren, the GT. I say interesting, I probably mean not the most loved McLaren. Just a bit of a weird one. It kind of sat in a no man's land between the Sports Series and the Super Series. It was all marketed about being able to fit golf clubs in the back. It's probably the most modern McLaren you can get, sub 100 grand. Yeah, so I mean, worth maybe discussing, but I don't think it's the right way to spend your money. Instead, you should be looking at things like that. Look at that, yellow 650S Spider. That is a great spec. That's a 600LT. Now we're not going to consider this today, because I think I'm looking at sub 100k McLarens, but that is for a sort of lightweight, limited, special, unbelievable value for money. You can find these for 120 odd grand. That's again a Spider. That is a whip. It's funny because in period, we always used to slag off McLarens for sounding like Hoovers, sounding crap. I bet today, when we take a few cars on a test drive, I'm gonna be like, oh my God, they sound great. Because of course, modern day supercars are so muted due to various regulations. But yeah, back in the day, people were like, oh God, McLaren sound awful. So a lot of people did exhaust modifications, including me. When I had my 540C, I had a Larini exhaust on it, just to get sort of more emotion from the exhaust and the engine. But yeah, as I say, I'm pretty sure driving a 2016 stock 570S sounds pretty good. So as Mr. McLaren, do you think there's one car that sort of stands out as being unbelievable value, sub 100k, or do they all offer something?
I think 100k is the bad number. So 100k gives you too much choice, and also gives you the opportunity of picking different things, do different things. So I would say if you save yourself some money, so drop it down to 80k, then I would say a 12C coupe is the one that stands out as being great value, and you can get them in the 70s. Now you will see them advertised in the 60s. My general advice is that it has a 6 in front of it. It probably needs a fair bit of work. The Sports Series cars, they have passive suspension, still very good, but it's a call and a strut, and they have no active aero at all. And also the price point is lower. Now the trick's in the title, you know, Super Series and Sports Series. So, but because it's a later car, it's newer, it holds its value in comparison to older cars, so they tend to bump into each other in terms of values. But the Super Series is the better model in terms of quality and power and build quality. And then the Sports Series is the lower of those, but also it's a newer car, therefore has some benefits of more modern manufacturing techniques, a better IRS system, stuff like that, etc.
Right, I'm back outside, but I'm in a car. Actually just went for a test drive in that 12C to kind of re-familiarise myself with the sort of first proper McLaren automotive car. But for the video, I want to focus on this thing, a 570 GT. And that's because the first ever sort of McLaren automotive event I attended was the international press drive of this very car. And of course, the interior, very familiar to the 540C that I owned. The GT gained this beautiful glass roof and the kind of compartment behind us to be putting extra luggage and things like that. But yeah, really nice and familiar cabin. And for me, it just feels, yeah, I feel like I can talk to you more about this experience. Anyway, let's get things started. You have to put your foot very firmly on the brake pedal with any McLarens to kind of fire them into life. And then the start-stop button is just down there, which I'm going to push and hold. There we go, and oh my God, the air conditioning has gone insane. Let's see, look, I immediately remember all of these things. Let's turn that right down. Oh, it's immediately just familiar and intuitive. Oh, I sort of missed this. Oh, that's also very familiar. A McLaren bonging at you. Luckily, that's to say my fuel level is low. Do I need to do something about that? Do you want me to put some petrol in it?
We must stop meeting like this.
It's red with no range.
Yeah.
So I go to the BP and just put a squirt in.
If you wouldn't mind, yeah.
It means I can do a longer drive.
Stick ultimate in, yeah.
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Yeah, if you go the other way, you get longer run.
Perfect. See you in a bit.
Thank you, sorry about that.
No worries. Okay, so the beginning of this test drive will be quite sedate so that we don't run out of fuel. Now, it's not just the bonging that gives me PTSD with driving a McLaren, it's also the refueling, because with my car, my most common error on my car was key not found. So I'd often fill up the car, come back out, people would be like, oh, rev it, mate. I'm like, yeah, all right, get in, try and start stopping the car. Boom, key not found. I'd be sort of stranded on a forecourt, like, oh my God. You're going to rev it? Well, I've got to turn it on first. Let's hope that doesn't happen, but there we go, a little squirt of fuel. That'll get us down the road for our test drive. Fingers crossed when I come back out, this thing starts. Oh, rain is probably coming, let's get out of here quick. I think the gearbox is instantly a little bit quicker and sharper in this thing than the 12C as well. Interestingly, it's got a little bit more personality to it, but it's just a bit sharper. Got these much bigger carbon fiber panels, which I really like. 12C is cool. From the outside, I think it's aging really well, that design. I like the fact it was the sort of first proper McLaren automotive car. But this, because of my history with the Sport Series, I just love these swooping designs. It's just a cool bit of kit. I'm getting overexcited, people. Once again, here I am, behind the wheel of a car going, I want one, I want another one. It's just lovely. Anyway, let's get out of this roadworks, drop a few cogs, which, by the way, let me actually show you quickly. You can do in these McLarens, so that's the up pedal, but if I push it away from me, it helps me drop down a gear. Anyway, here we go, road ahead. Yeah. One thing you have to be aware of with McLarens, very long pedals, brake and accelerator. If you want to get proper braking, you gotta push hard and long with the pedal. And if you really want like speed, you gotta bury that throttle, because if you're timid with it, you're like, oh, it's not that fast. If you're foot to the floor, my gosh. Yeah, that was a lot of traction light. That was a lot of traction light. This thing is Larry. Oh, they are engaging. The thing about the sound, I mentioned it when we were walking around the forecourt. You know, they do still sound a bit crap. Like even just, okay, they're maybe noisier than modern cars, but the tone is still a bit poo. So I now go back to putting an exhaust on these things. But the drive is engaging. That's the whole thing. If you can get one of these cars that works, oh, they are fantastic. UK roads, you actually can't use it. Oh, it's so good. So good, despite the bonging. Anyway, let's go back. Let's have a proper chat with John, because it's easy to get overexcited. I always do. It's a wicked car, but it's not if it's going to spend half of its life in the workshop or leave you with bills that cost as much as the car does to buy, which has happened. I know, I've heard of that happening. So, yeah. Back to Thorny Motorsport.
Each model is subtly different in the niggles that it has, but there are some consistencies. The two main things people are concerned about is engines and gearboxes. A brand new gearbox in any McLaren model is about £27,000 now. but we can rebuild them for £7,000 or £8,000 complete rebuild. So it's not as bad as you thought.
Sure.
And the telltale sign were leaks from the little telltale hole on the bottom. I have done a gearbox for a while, to be fair.
Okay.
We did 10, 12 a year, now I'm doing 1, 2 a year. So I think they run through the system.
Sure.
The second thing, and that's very hard to tell. There's no way you can tell. You can't go to a forecourt and go, unless you take the under trays off, run it up, look for the telltale hole, all kinds of bits.
Sure.
The second thing is engines. Yeah. Now, be it the 3.8, less so the 4 litre, they are very sophisticated engines, but they have counter-rotational cams. All right. Normally a cam in an engine rotates into the oil bath. Yeah. Okay, so it picks up oil the moment you turn it over. But on all the 3.8s and 4 litres, they're counter-rotational. So they fling oil off. Now the reason why they do it is less drag, which is why they're so good.
Sure.
And we only have 18% transmission losses on a dyno of these things. They are a very efficient engine. But it means the first time you start that car, the cams are technically dry. They need oil pressure to build up. Now it takes less than a second of building up. But if you rev the car hard when cold, if you don't run enough oil into it, you will start a wear process on the top end, and it could be cams, followers, fingers, phasers, all kinds.
Wow.
The good news is it's fairly obvious. So a ticking noise when you start the car up, if that ticking noise carries on 10, 12, 15, 20 seconds after being started up, I would be, what's that for? Okay. They do tick a bit because the injectors tick.
Sure.
So every time I start a car coming in here, we've tuned to it now. Yeah. We can start it up and go, yeah, we're starting to get some noise there. Okay. So if it's a full court type process, it's something you can at least try.
Sure.
The second thing is oil level checking. Be amazed how many people, and I don't say all the guys like this, but they don't check their oil enough, and they'll come into here. I had 2 last week where they had no oil on it. Literally 2 or 3 litres less than they should do.
Do you get an electronic readout of oil, or it's a manual checking process?
It's a dry sump system, so you don't have a dipstick. There's a process on the dash you have to follow, which is getting it warmed up, holding it at RPM. The 2 litres are a pain. It's 2 minutes. You're sat there.
Wow.
We worked out I do nearly an hour a week just testing oils.
I don't think, it's the same for Sports Series and Super Series?
No, so the 3.8s, so all the Sports Series and all the Super Series cars other than the 720 and the GT. It's only 3.8. Yeah. It's a 40-second wait. So you get on a dash. It's all we've done. You do this.
I can't remember if
and you measure it 40 seconds each time. If you can't remember you did it, you're a bad person.
No.
Right? That's how it is. Every 3 weeks to a month.
You're judging me.
Oh God, yeah, I'll judge everybody here. That's how it works.
It was a long time ago, John. For God's sake.
Yeah. Your car is out there somewhere. Coming someone like me going, why is my engine ticking? Oh, the previous owner was a dick.
Yeah, that is right. Yeah.
So as long as you measure them regularly, you're fine. They don't burn oil. They don't really use oil. Sure. Even track day cars don't use them, etc. But if you don't check, that's time it builds up. And the difference between a low oil and a high level is 100 mil.
Oh, it's
a beaker. We've done a lot about the fact that cars have corrosion. Now, technically it's not corrosion, but we call it that because basically it's bubbling paint.
Sure.
Now, all the models are affected, but in different ways. So in here we've got Sports Series and Super Series cars, and they have different ones. So this is a 12C. These have composite panels primarily. And the composite panels around the wings, around the wing edges here, etc., underneath the front of the bonnet, sometimes the rear wing edges as well. It's bubbling in the laminate itself, which is water vapour. Only way to fix it is rub it back down, reprimer it, repaint it. On the Sports Series cars, like the GT, the 570 in the corner, they're aluminium panels. Okay. So these are ones where it's a electrostatic reaction of the metal with the air, and then it being painted, and then because it's already started to technically corrode in the air, the bubbling's already there.
Right.
Only way to fix that, rub it right back down to bare metal. You have to coat it with a special coating that stops it oxidizing, then primer, then paint, then it's fixed.
And electronic gremlins came later with some Sports Series and stuff like that. The more inverted, I say Keynote founder's my go-to because it plated me.
The keys are crap.
But all that kind of stuff inherently felt like it did come with sort of 720S generation, 570S, or am I wrong in that?
No, wrong again. There's no consideration.
Yeah, there's all crap. Yeah.
I spend half my time saying no, that's incorrect. So electronically, it all depends on the build cycle. So on the 720, they came out with enormous electrical gremlins because frankly they weren't really put together very well. Sure. We had one car come in as a launch edition 720, Christmas tree everywhere, and we found every connector wasn't really pushed in properly. It's just a little bit loose. And all it was is, so what happens is vapor got inside the plug, and that meant it never got the collection. All we do is take them apart, clean the collection, plug them back in again, and I zip tied them as well. Okay. And never a problem since. Yeah. But it was 20 hours of labour to rebuild the whole damn thing. Sure. Now, fortunately, it's a bit better. But other gremlins, for example, we had a good example on 12Cs, mice. They love the insulation on these things. So you
so
start
many
chewing
portions
through
there,
wiring
yeah.
looms, then there's
Yeah.
not much you can do. I can't blame McLaren for that one.
Yeah, of course.
But again, there's no consistency. There's no, this is problem for these models and vice versa, those models. They're all hit and miss by how they've been looked after primarily.
But I'm now feeling a bit overwhelmed and depressed, John. So like, it's not all bad news, right? Like it's not all bad news, John, is it?
I am guilty. Well, I have been accused of being a McLaren basher. Now, I'm no fanboy. I don't believe in this slavish following of a brand. I'm very much based on what the car does, and I'm about the car rather than the company. And if you reverse back 10, 12 years, YouTubers full of videos of people saying, I got my new McLaren, it's broken.
Yes.
I got a light on. I can't stand this car. I've now sold it, it cost me 100 grand. And our argument is that's fairly negative for the brand and the car. Now, I admit there are videos in there from people like me saying, here's the issue. But the idea is, here's the issue, here's how to fix it.
Sure.
If you're buying a car, avoid that issue. If you own this car, also avoid this issue, but it can be fixed. And my argument is that we're best off in knowing than not.
But from a maintenance point of view, are there good stories? Do you get cars that come through that just need, 500 quid, a grand's worth of work, and then off they go? Or does everything have a headache?
It comes down to confidence. So I've got 54 cars here today, which is about average for us. Okay. They're all in for servicing work. The average bill per car is about £1,500 per car per year.
Per year. That's what I was going to ask.
So I'm confident enough. We've now have a service plan.
Oh, wow.
So for £4,000 covers you 3 years of servicing, any model.
Oh, wow.
So it's fixed.
Okay.
So if I'm unconfident about the quality of the car's running costs, I'm capping that number. Okay. Either I'm a lunatic,
yes,
or I've got a rough idea where I shouldn't lose money on.
Well, having met you today, I'm not so sure on the first part.
So
it's doable.
The pain's done.
The pain is done.
If there was a banner on a number plate on a McLaren, it should say "My pain is done."
But buy well.
Yes.
Look out for the big stuff.
Yes.
And spend more on the way in for the right car.
Yeah.
Don't get hung up on, but I want silver wheels
and use them.
Yeah, clearly there's a lot to.
I think we're up to 400 videos now, all about McLarens, and it's our view with life is that the more you know, the better you can buy. Yes. Therefore, your ownership experience is going to be more enhanced, and you won't have those shocking bills. You'll be the guy going to the pub saying, "How's your McLaren? Brilliant, cost free, fantastic."
Because that's the thing. When the cars work, they're unbelievable. I've got to be honest, speaking to John just then, I don't think any of my concerns around buying like a bargain McLaren have been alleviated. I would still be inherently nervous. Okay, clearly he's figured out a way to make it all manageable. He's got that servicing plan he mentioned. He said if you buy a good car, you could budget 1,500 odd quid per year and you should be okay. And they've bottomed out in value, so you're not going to lose a ton, but he also told me a lot of stories off camera about cars that have come in with horrific issues. A 600 LT had a 60 grand bill. 60 grand! I mean, that is not fun. But then look, you come across something like this, beautifully spec'd 720S. What a car! And okay, as I mentioned earlier, it's not the price bracket we're looking at today. These are north of 100 grand. But at 130 odd, like so much car for the money. And when they work, they're great. And being here today amongst these cars, driving a sports series car again, that 570G, I'm like, this is so amazing. But yeah, I'm walking away from today staying like, it is still a bit of a heart in your mouth. Is it all going to work out? Have I bought a shitter? Am I going to get stung with a horrendous bill? I don't know. And which one would you buy? Clearly John thinks the 12C is a bit of a steal, and I'm with him. I like what it represents in the McLaren automotive story, like the design, like everything, and it is a super series car. But then I lean more towards sports series, even if it hasn't got the trick suspension and stuff. I don't know. I mean, what he did point out is essentially, when it comes to McLaren, there's kind of any car for any budget or any car for any situation. You can kind of fit one into wherever you stand. So it's up to you. So what would you do? Firstly, would you be brave enough to bite the bullet? Because I'm not sure I still would. And then if you were going to do it, which one would you buy? I don't know. Huge thanks to John and the Thorny Motorsport team for having us down. They are clearly the place to go if you are considering buying one of these cars, or if you've got one and you want to maintain them. I think I'll be back. Maybe just to drive some stuff, not buy, but never say never. I think I'll have McLaren again.